I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped into that mansion. Before my new husband, Mr. Leonard Whitmore, even removed his mask, my heart was already beating too fast for a bride who was supposed to feel grateful. Grateful that he had rescued my family from nearly $400,000 in debt. Grateful that at 26, fresh out of school, I had been chosen by a wealthy benefactor who could secure my future. That's what my mother kept repeating as she tightened my veil earlier that day, pretending her hands weren't shaking. But all that gratitude evaporated the second the double doors of his bedroom shut behind us. The house felt too quiet, too still, like a place that remembered screams. I stood there, clutching the silk of my wedding dress, listening to the soft rattle in his breathing as he slowly reached up, gloved hands trembling, to remove the mask he'd worn all night for medical protection. That was the excuse. That was the story everyone accepted without question. A 60-something widower with chronic respiratory issues who kept his face covered for health reasons. But when he pulled the mask down, inch by inch, revealing pale, almost gray skin stretched thin over sharp bones, my knees nearly buckled. It wasn't just that he looked ill. It was the look in his eyes, sharp, alert, too alive. Eyes that studied me like a test he had already taken with other women. Eyes that seemed to remember me. I swallowed hard. "Mr. Whitmore, are you okay?" He smiled slowly. Too slowly. "Please," he rasped, "call me Leonard. Tonight you are my wife." My stomach twisted. His voice didn't match the frail man everyone described. It was firmer, stronger, like he'd spent the whole wedding pretending to be weaker than he was. I stepped back without meaning to. His smile widened just enough to show it pleased him. "Don't be frightened," he whispered. "I know you didn't choose this marriage willingly, but you'll learn. All my wives learn." Wives, plural. The word echoed like a metal door slamming shut. I had asked during the engagement, quietly, softly, out of concern, what happened to his previous wives. My mother dismissed it as tragic illnesses or accidents. But the moment Leonard said the word, there was something in it, something heavy, something practiced, something that didn't sound like grief at all. A cold breeze drifted through the room, though no windows were open. Leonard reached for my hand. His fingers were cold, almost icy, and he squeezed too tightly. "You'll do better than the others." "The others?" My voice cracked. "Yes," he blinked slowly. "The wives who came before you. Each one thought she could hide from her responsibilities. But you..." He leaned in, breath warm against my cheek. "I strike you as loyal." My heart hammered so loudly I felt it in my throat. "What responsibilities?" His smile sharpened. "You'll see." A sudden knock echoed from outside the bedroom door, sharp, urgent. "Sir, the doctor is downstairs. He says you missed your treatment." Leonard's jaw clenched, hard. For the first time, I saw irritation, real boiling irritation flash across his face. He turned back to me. "We're not done," he whispered. Then he pulled his mask back on, restoring the frail persona as easily as someone stepping into a costume. He moved toward the door, slow, deliberate, pretending to limp, pretending to struggle for air. But I had seen the truth. He wasn't weak. He wasn't dying. And somewhere inside that mansion, something had happened to the women who had stood where I stood. As soon as he left, I exhaled shakily and looked around the luxurious room. High ceilings, dark wood furniture polished to a mirror shine, a massive canopy bed draped in silk. But it wasn't beautiful. It was suffocating. Too controlled, too perfect, too old. Then I noticed it. A door, hidden behind a velvet curtain on the far wall. A door no one mentioned during the grand tour. A door with fresh scratches around the handle. My breath stopped. I wasn't alone in the room, or at least I hadn't been the last person locked in here. My fingers shook as I pulled the curtain aside, just enough to confirm it really was a door. The knob was cold to the touch. Too cold, like metal frozen in winter. A sudden thought hit me, one so terrifying I had to grab the wall to steady myself. Had one of his wives tried to escape through this door? My chest tightened. I backed away, trying to think, trying to breathe. I needed to call someone, text someone, tell someone I was in danger. But when I reached for my clutch, my phone was gone. Leonard had taken it. A chill rippled down my spine. The bedroom door creaked open behind me. I froze. Leonard stepped back in, mask still on, eyes too bright. "I forgot to mention something," he said softly. "What?" My voice barely existed. His eyes lingered on the curtain hiding the secret door. "In this house," he whispered, "no door opens unless I want it to." My entire body went cold. "And you?" He took one slow step toward me. "Learn the rules starting tonight." He closed the door behind him with a click that felt like a lock sliding into place. And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty I had married a man whose wives didn't just disappear. They had been silenced. The light flickered. Leonard smiled behind the mask, and I felt the walls close in. When the engagement was announced, everyone congratulated my parents. No one bothered to ask me if I was okay. My mother kept whispering, "Just endure 1 year. 1 year and our family will be free." Her voice trembled every time she said it. I asked her once, why him? Why this man? Why someone older than Dad? She broke down right there in the kitchen. "He's the only one who offered to clear the loan without taking the house or sending your father to jail." So, my life became a transaction. The night before the wedding, a thick envelope arrived at our door. Inside was a note written in elegant, old-fashioned handwriting. "Arrive at the ceremony exactly on time, no delays, and do not visit the estate beforehand." It felt more like instructions than a welcome. Then I noticed something strange. The bottom of the note had tiny brown stains, almost like dried blood. My mother snatched it away before I could ask anything. "It doesn't matter, just follow the rules," she said. But my stomach twisted. Why did a wealthy, supposedly sick old man need to send rules to his young bride? And why did those stains look so much like blood? The wedding day felt unreal. Everyone kept smiling, but it was the kind of smile people have at funerals. Forced, trembling, terrified of saying the wrong thing. I stood at the altar, hands sweating, waiting for the groom. He arrived late, pushed in a wheelchair. His face was hidden behind a white medical mask. Dark glasses covered his eyes. Gloves covered his hands. Not an inch of skin was visible. He never spoke a single word during the ceremony. When the priest asked if I took him as his wife, he simply nodded, once, stiffly. When it was my turn, my mother squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. I whispered, "I do," even though every cell in my body screamed, "Run!" After the vows, he signed the marriage papers with a shaky hand. His signature looked like someone had guided his wrist. Then, as we walked out, I noticed something that made my blood turn cold. The groom's caretaker, a tall man in a dark suit, leaned down and whispered into his ear, "Only one more. Make sure she lasts longer this time." I froze. Lasts longer? One more? What did that mean? And why did the groom nod? After the ceremony, They didn't take us to a reception. There was no dinner, no celebration, no photos with family. Instead, a black car pulled up. The caretaker opened the back door and said flatly, "Madam, the master is tired. We leave now." Master. The word made my stomach twist. My parents didn't protest. In fact, they looked relieved, almost eager to hand me over. The ride to the mansion took nearly 2 hours. My groom sat beside me, silent, breathing heavily behind his mask. Every few minutes, his chest rattled like something was breaking inside him. Once I tried to speak. Are you feeling okay?" His head snapped toward me, too fast for someone supposedly weak. I flinched. The caretaker watched us through the rearview mirror, expression blank but eyes sharp. "You don't need to worry about his health. Just follow the rules. Everything will be fine." Rules. Again. When we finally reached the mansion, the gate opened on its own. Tall iron bars sliding apart with a low mechanical groan. The house loomed like something out of an old Gothic novel. Dark stone, towering windows, ivy crawling up the walls like veins. Inside it was even stranger. No paintings of family, no photos, just long hallways and dim chandeliers. The caretaker handed me a small silver key. "This is for your bedroom. The master will join you tonight. You must not leave the room after midnight. If you hear noises, ignore them." I stared at him, confused and terrified. "What kind of noises?" He paused, then said quietly, "The kind the previous wives couldn't handle." My heart dropped. Previous wives. Plural. But everyone had told me I was his first. The caretaker led me through the mansion with long, echoing steps that made the whole place feel hollow. The air smelled old, like dust and something metallic that I couldn't identify. Every door we passed had heavy locks on the outside, and every window was fitted with bars disguised beneath carved wood. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a place built to keep things in or keep things out. We reached the room that was supposed to be mine. The caretaker stopped, handed me the silver key again, and said in a low tone, "You enter at midnight, not before." Then he turned sharply and walked away before I could ask anything else. My groom was nowhere to be seen. At some point during the walk through the mansion, he had simply vanished, wheelchair and all. I stood in the middle of the hallway, holding the key, trembling. What kind of marriage began with rules like these? What kind of husband disappeared into the shadows of his own home? And why did the caretaker speak to me as if I weren't a bride, but a prisoner arriving for her sentence? With nowhere else to go, I explored the mansion on my own, carefully, quietly, listening for any sound. But the house was silent, too silent. The kind of silence that feels watched. Every time I turned a corner, I felt someone just behind me. Every time I looked into a dark doorway, I felt like the darkness was breathing. I found the library at the end of a long corridor. It was enormous, filled with towering shelves and leather-bound books that looked untouched. But there was something odd, Dust coated most of the room, yet a single section of shelves had been wiped clean recently. Someone had been there recently, often. I scanned the titles. Most were journals with no names, only dates. Some were more than 40 years old. My fingers hovered over one. When I pulled it out, the spine cracked dryly like it hadn't been opened in decades. Inside were neat, elegant entries written in the same handwriting I recognized from the letter sent before my wedding. But the words were wrong. They weren't normal journal entries. They read like instructions, rituals, rules, page after page filled with strange lists. Never remove the mask. Never let her see the face. Never allow her near the cellar. Never allow her to open the red door. If she hears the crying, do not comfort her. If she screams, do not intervene. Wait. It will stop. My skin turned cold. These weren't rules for the bride. These were rules for the husband. And there were more. Pages describing something that happened with wife number 1, wife number 2. And then the ink changed. The writing became frantic. She saw it. She opened the door. She knew. I couldn't stop her. I can't stop any of them. They always see eventually. The last page was ripped out. A sudden clang echoed through the mansion, loud and sharp, like a door slamming shut far away. I jumped, dropped the journal, and backed away from the shelf. My breath shook. Something about this house felt alive, like the walls were listening. I forced myself out of the library and returned to the hallway. A strange draft swept past me, cold enough to raise goosebumps across my arms. The lights flickered. Then, from somewhere deep in the mansion, a low moan drifted upward. Not human, too distorted, too hollow. I didn't wait to hear it again. I ran back toward my room, clutching the silver key, but when I reached the door, something new made my stomach twist. The keyhole was scratched, as if someone had tried desperately to claw their way out. Above the doorknob, carved in the wood, were faint words. "Don't stay after midnight. He changes." My blood ran cold. I looked down the hall. Where was my husband? Where was the caretaker? And what did he change into?
For the next hour, I stayed frozen in front of that scratched door, gripping the silver key so tightly my palm ached. I didn't know whether to trust the warning carved into the wood or ignore it. Midnight was still far away, but every instinct screamed that something in this mansion changed after dark, and not for the better. I needed answers, real answers, not whispers, not riddles, not strange rules written in old journals. So I forced myself to explore more of the mansion, even though every hallway felt colder, every shadow seemed deeper than before. The house creaked constantly, as if something enormous was shifting within the walls. I kept telling myself it was old construction, but part of me knew that was a lie. At the end of another corridor, I found a room with the door half open. Inside, the faint smell of medicine hung in the air, something sterile mixed with something rotten underneath. It looked like an infirmary. A single metal bed stood in the center, straps dangling from the sides. Cabinets lined the walls, filled with old medical tools I didn't recognize. On a small table beside the bed sat a stack of photographs. My trembling fingers lifted the first one. A woman in a wedding gown, pale, eyes frightened. Her face was familiar, The same woman I had seen in a framed portrait near the staircase earlier, but in this photograph she looked terrified, as if she already knew something horrible was coming. The second photo showed another bride, younger, dark hair, a bruise on her wrist. The third was worse, a blurry figure in a white dress running down a hallway that looked exactly like the one outside this room. The fourth was empty, just a wall. But someone had scribbled on the back. She wouldn't obey. She looked at him. She saw his face. After that, nothing could save her. My breath caught. My stomach twisted. I dropped the photos and backed away, bumping into a table. Something metal fell and clattered loudly on the floor, echoing through the entire mansion like a scream. The lights flickered again. Then, footsteps. Slow, dragging, uneven, coming from behind me. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. The shadows didn't look the same, though. They seemed longer, stretched, as if something had just slipped out of sight. I hurried back toward my room, but halfway there, the caretaker stepped out of the darkness. His sudden appearance made me gasp. "Madam, you are not permitted to roam freely." My voice shook. "What is happening in this house? Who were those women? And why are there photos like that?" His expression didn't change. "Curiosity will kill you faster than anything in this mansion." "That's not an answer," I whispered. He sighed. "The master requires obedience. The previous wives failed to follow certain rules. That is all you need to know." I stepped closer to him, anger rising through my fear. "Then tell me what he is. Why can't he be seen without that mask? Why can't he show his face?" His jaw tightened. For a moment, he looked afraid, truly afraid. "It is not my place to explain," he said quietly. "My duty is to ensure he survives the night, and that you survive it too, if you listen." Survive. The word hit hard. "What happens at midnight?" I whispered. He didn't answer. Instead, he pressed a small object into my hand, a black ribbon, frayed at the edges. This belonged to the last wife. She ignored the rules. Before I could respond, he turned sharply and walked away, disappearing around a corner without another word. My heart hammered. I hurried back toward my room, but something made me stop. A faint rhythmic sound echoed from deeper inside the mansion. A heartbeat, slow, heavy, unnatural. It grew louder each second, making the floor vibrate softly under my feet. I kept following it without meaning to. It felt like it was pulling me, drawing me in. Around a corner, down a narrow hallway, to a door painted red. The same red door mentioned in the journal. The heartbeat thudded from behind it, deep, heavy, like something enormous and alive was trapped inside. For a moment, I swear the doorknob moved, twitched, as if someone or something on the other side was reaching for it. My breath trembled. I pressed a hand to the wood. It pulsed under my palm. Then a whisper. Soft, fragile, a woman's voice. "Don't open it. Please, don't. It's still hungry." I jerked my hand back and stumbled away. The heartbeat quickened, pounding against the door as if it sensed me leaving. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached my own room. I shoved the silver key into the lock, turned it and slammed the door behind me. My chest burned. My thoughts spiraled. What was behind that red door? What had happened to the previous wives? And most terrifying of all, what exactly was my husband? The clock on the wall ticked louder than normal. Each second scraped through my nerves. 11:58 p.m. Midnight was coming, and whatever changed in this house, whatever he became,
I was about to see it. By 11:59 p.m., I was pacing the room so hard the floorboards creaked under my steps. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every few seconds, I checked the lock again, tugging at the door handle to make sure it was sealed. The silver key felt warm in my palm, as if the metal itself was warning me not to let go. I could still feel that echo of the heartbeat from the red door, pulsing through my bones even though I was floors away. The woman's whisper replayed in my mind, broken, terrified, pleading, "Don't open it. It's still hungry." Who was she? A former wife? Someone trapped? Someone who didn't make it out? The clock on the wall clicked to midnight. When the second hand hit 12, every light in the mansion flicked off at once. Darkness swallowed everything. I froze, too scared to breathe. For a long moment, there was nothing. No footsteps, no whispers, not even the wind outside. The silence felt suffocating, like the whole house was holding its breath with me. Then I heard it. A scraping sound, slow, deliberate, like claws dragging across the wooden floor just outside my bedroom. I stumbled backward until I hit the edge of the bed. The scraping grew louder, circling my door, testing the walls. My heart hammered so loudly, I was sure it could hear me. The lock rattled. Once, twice, a third time. Something was trying to get in. I whispered to myself over and over, "Don't open it, don't open it, don't open it." The scratching stopped suddenly, replaced by a soft rhythmic tapping on the other side of the door. Tap, tap, tap. Each tap perfectly spaced, like someone knocking politely, except no human hand could have produced that hollow, echoing sound. Then I heard a voice. "Wife." My blood froze. It was his voice, but deeper, distorted, dragged through something monstrous. A voice stretched into something unrecognizable. "Wife, open the door. Let me see you." I crawled backward until my spine hit the wall. My breath came out in shallow gasps. That wasn't a sick old man. That wasn't the fragile masked groom I had seen earlier. That was something else. Something hungry. Suddenly the knocking stopped. The air went still again, as if whatever stood outside the door had sensed my fear and was savoring it. "Wife," he whispered again, quieter but clearer. "If you see me before morning, you will not survive your first night." Another rule, another threat wrapped in warning. Then the voice changed, sounding like multiple voices layered together. "Obey, and I will not harm you. Disobey, and you will join the others." He dragged his fingers, or claws, down the length of the door. The sound splintered through my skull. The wooden panel shuddered as if something enormous leaned against it. I clamped my hands over my mouth to stop myself from screaming. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time made no sense anymore. Eventually, the digging, scraping, tapping sounds began to fade, but something new replaced them. Footsteps. Running. Not toward my room, away from it. Then a scream. A woman's scream. High, sharp, abrupt, cut off mid-breath. My stomach twisted so violently I thought I would throw up. Someone else was in this mansion tonight, and whatever lived behind my husband's mask had found her first. I crawled to the door and pressed my ear against the wood. The hallway was filled with echoing thuds, then the dragging sound of something heavy being pulled across the floor. A soft sobbing followed. It didn't sound human. I forced myself to move away from the door and curled up against the far wall.
I didn't sleep, not even for a second. The sounds continued all night. Scratching, slamming, something whispering my name from the hallway, something else laughing, a hoarse, broken laugh that made my skin crawl. At one point, I swear I saw a shadow move under the door, impossibly thin and long, stretching across the floor like fingers reaching for me. But I didn't move. I didn't speak. Not even breathe unless I had to. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, faint light started to bleed into the room through the cracks around the curtains. Morning light. The moment sunlight touched the walls, the mansion went still. The tension in the air snapped like a broken thread. No more whispers, no more scratching, no more heartbeat echoing through the halls. I didn't dare open the door, but after a few minutes, I heard footsteps, normal ones this time. Slow, steady, controlled. A soft knock. "Madam," the caretaker said, "you may come out now. The master awaits you for breakfast." Breakfast? After everything I heard last night? My voice cracked. "What happened? I heard someone screamed. Someone was hurt." He didn't answer fully. The master becomes different at night. As long as you follow the rules, he will not harm you. I swallowed hard. And the others? The wives before me? He hesitated. They broke the rules. I clenched my fists. "Tell me the truth. Are they dead?" The caretaker didn't blink. "Not dead. Worse." Worse? Before I could ask what that meant, he stepped back. "The master waits." I stood there, trembling, the silver key still clutched in my shaking hand, knowing this was only the beginning. And that sunrise didn't make me safer. It only meant I had survived the first night. Barely. I followed the caretaker down the long hallway, each step feeling heavier than the last. Morning light streamed through the tall windows, but even the sunlight here looked pale and tired, like it didn't want to be inside this house any more than I did. The carpets were thick enough to muffle footsteps, but I could still hear something underneath, like faint echoes, murmurs trapped beneath the floorboards. "Where is he?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "In the dining hall," the caretaker replied. "He will be as you expect him, at least during the day." As I expect him, my stomach churned. That meant the fragile old man version, the one with the mask, the gloves, the silence. The version that looked breakable, the version that hid something far more dangerous inside. When we stepped into the dining hall, I stopped cold. There he was, sitting upright in a high-backed chair at the head of the massive wooden table. He looked exactly as he had during the wedding. Mask, gloves, sunglasses. Still, quiet, almost lifeless. But what disturbed me wasn't him. It was the setting around him. On the table were 3 place settings. One for me, one for him, and one untouched and covered in dust, as if waiting for someone who never showed up. I whispered, "Whose seat is that?" The caretaker stepped closer to the 3rd chair and gently wiped the layer of dust with his hand. He said, "A reminder of what happens when disobedience occurs." My skin prickled. I sat across from my husband, unable to read anything through the mask. He didn't move at first. The caretaker began pouring tea into the cup beside me. The clink of the porcelain echoed too loudly in the still room.
Then my husband lifted his hand, slow, trembling, and placed it on the table. Only now in daylight did I notice how inhumanly long his fingers seemed, almost jointed in the wrong places. I swallowed hard. "So," I whispered, "what happens during the day? What is he then?" The caretaker didn't answer. Instead, my husband finally turned his head toward me. His voice, raspy, low, escaped from behind the mask. "You survived your wedding night." My throat tightened. "Barely." He tilted his head. "Barely is enough." I didn't know whether that was reassurance or a threat. I forced myself to sit straighter. "What are you? What happens to you at night? Why can't I see your face?" His fingers twitched on the table, scraping lightly against the wood. "My condition is not something you are prepared to witness." "That's not an answer," I snapped before I could stop myself. The caretaker stiffened. I could feel him silently begging me not to push, but I needed to. If I was going to survive, I needed to know what I was living with. What happened to the last wives? Where are they? Why did they scream? Why was there... My voice cracked. "Something dragging across the hall last night." The caretaker cut in sharply. "Enough." But my husband raised a hand, silencing him. "She is entitled to know," he murmured. Then he turned his masked face toward me. "The wives before you did not listen. They tried to see me after midnight. They tried to open forbidden doors. They tried to escape." His voice deepened, "and they paid the price." A chill ran through me so violently I almost dropped my teacup. My husband leaned slightly forward. "You are young, intelligent, obedient. You may last longer." Last longer. The same phrase the caretaker had whispered at the wedding. I couldn't bring myself to ask, last longer than what? Instead, I asked the one question I had been terrified of since I walked into this cursed mansion. "Why did you choose me?" He didn't hesitate. "You didn't choose me, but your family did." The words sliced through my chest. He continued, "Your father owed a debt he could never repay. I offered a solution." My breath caught. "So you bought me?" My husband chuckled softly. "No, little wife, not bought, but bound. You are here because your family valued their safety over your freedom." I felt sick. Everything suddenly made sense. The tears my mother refused to explain, the relief on their faces when the black car took me, the desperation that pushed them towards a man like him. But before I could respond, the caretaker cleared his throat. "Master, she must understand that the rules are not punishments. They are protections, for her and for you." My husband nodded slowly. "There are 3 rules you must follow without fail, wife." The room went silent. My heart pounded as he lifted a long, gloved finger. 1. You must not leave your bedroom after midnight. A second finger. 2. You must never, under any circumstances, remove my mask. A third. And you must never open the red door. My chest tightened. What's behind that door? His masked face tilted slightly. A part of me. My blood ran cold. A part. Not a thing. Not a creature. A part. Before I could speak, a loud thud echoed somewhere deep in the mansion. The caretaker stiffened. My husband didn't flinch, but I saw his fingers curl. "It isn't fully dormant," the caretaker said softly.
My husband rose slowly from his chair, and for a moment his back bent in a way that no human spine should. His legs wobbled, then straightened smoothly. "Breakfast is over," he whispered. "You must return to your room." The caretaker grabbed my arm, guiding me toward the hall. His grip wasn't painful, but firm, urgent. "Get there quickly," he murmured. "Do not linger." Before I turned the corner, I glanced back at my masked husband. He was standing perfectly still, head tilted toward the ceiling, as if listening to something above us. Something alive, something hungry, something waiting for nightfall. The moment my eyes met the black lenses of his sunglasses, he whispered, "Tonight will be worse. Prepare yourself, wife." My knees almost buckled. If last night was only the beginning, how much worse could this get?
The caretaker escorted me back to my room, but this time there was a heaviness in his steps I hadn't noticed before. A tension, a dread. Every few seconds he glanced over his shoulder as if expecting something to crawl out from the darkness behind us. When we reached my door, he stopped me with a hand on my arm. His grip tightened, not painfully, but urgently. "Madame, you must not provoke him again. The master, he's fragile during the day, but he listens. He remembers. And tonight," his voice faltered, "tonight will test you." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean, test me?" He scanned the hallway, lowered his voice even further, and said, "The master's hunger grows stronger with each night a new wife is present. You are young. You are new. The house feels you." The house. He said it like it was alive. I wanted to ask more, but the caretaker suddenly straightened his posture and stepped back. Footsteps approached. Too quiet at first, then expanding through the hallway like a slow-moving wave. My husband. He appeared at the far end of the corridor, leaning heavily on the wall, his masked face tilted downward. His movements were slow, stiff, unnatural, as if his body belonged to someone else and he was still learning how to control it. He said, "Wife," his voice faint but sharp. "Go inside." I obeyed immediately. The caretaker shut the door behind me, locked it, and I heard his voice through the wood. "Remember the rules." Then, silence. I pressed my ear against the door, but whatever they said next was inaudible. After a minute or two, the footsteps faded away. I was alone again. I sat on the edge of the bed, my thoughts spiraling like a storm. 3 rules. 3 wives before me. 3 warnings carved in the shadows of this mansion. A part of him behind the red door. The photos. The scratches. The scream. I needed answers. Clear, solid answers. Not riddles, not fear. I scanned the room again, looking for something I had missed. A clue, a weapon, anything. I noticed a small drawer in the bedside table I hadn't opened. Inside, there was a stack of letters tied with a red ribbon. Old, yellowed, the handwriting delicate and swirling. I untied the ribbon and unfolded the first letter. "My dearest husband, they told me you were kind. They told me you were lonely. They didn't tell me about the night." The rest was scratched out, violently, as if someone or something had ripped through the words in anger. The second letter wasn't scratched. "My love, you change after midnight. You do not remember what you become. You beg me not to open the door. You beg me not to leave the room. I obey, but I hear what you do. I hear the walls crying. I hear the house breathing.
My chest tightened. The third letter was short. I saw your face. No signature. No explanation. Just 3 words that felt like a warning carved into my mind. The fourth letter was torn in half. The part remaining read, "It pulled me toward the red door. I felt it behind the wood, whispering, begging, hungry. It said it was your heart." Your heart? I dropped the letters, my hands trembling. Something in me shattered, fear mixing with sympathy, confusion mixing with terror. What was he suffering from? What monstrosity lived under that mask? What part of him could be locked behind a red door? Before I could process any of it, a soft knock came from outside my door. Not loud, not threatening, just soft. But it was still daylight, too early for the night creature version of him. I hesitated, then pressed my ear against the wood. "Wife," he whispered, voice low and trembling. "I will change soon. I won't remember anything I said to you this morning. But you must stay inside. Promise me." His voice sounded broken, agonized, almost human. I swallowed hard. "I promise." There was silence, then the faint sound of fabric rustling against the wall, like he had pressed his masked forehead to the door. "I do not want to hurt you, but I always do." My chest tightened painfully. "Tell me how to help you. Tell me what this house is. Tell me what you are." He let out a long, shaky breath. "I was born sick, dying. My family, they made a choice to save me. A ritual, a binding. But the salvation created something else, something that grows stronger each night." I held my breath. "You married a man, but you live with a creature." Before I could respond, a violent shudder rippled through the door, his body convulsing on the other side. His breath turned ragged, fast, animalistic. "It's starting," he gasped. "Stay back from the door." I jumped away, just as something heavy slammed into the wood. Once. Twice. Then a guttural growl tore through the hallway. The transformation had begun. I backed up until I hit the wall. The entire room vibrated as he dragged himself away, snarling, claws or limbs scraping against the floor. Then, silence. A long, tense silence. I exhaled shakily, too early to feel relieved, because the sun hadn't set yet. If he was changing before nightfall, something was wrong. The caretaker's voice echoed faintly down the hall. "Contain him! He's early! Lock the corridor! Hurry!" I gasped. Early? That meant the rules were breaking down. The house was changing. The hunger was stronger. I approached the door again and heard frenetic movement, furniture crashing, men yelling, something enormous slamming into walls. Then, a whisper slipped under the crack of my door, cold as frost. "Wife, I smell you." My blood froze, and before I could move, the knob twitched, just once. He had found me hours before midnight, which meant tonight, I might not survive.
The doorknob didn't turn again, but the metal remained trembling, rattling lightly as if something with slow, deliberate patience rested its hand on the other side. The air thickened. I felt it, this awful, unnatural sense of being watched through solid wood. "Wife," the whisper came again, low, wet, distorted. "Open." No, I couldn't move. My legs felt locked in place, my breath shallow and trembling. Just then, bang! A violent crash echoed from somewhere down the hall, followed by the thunder of footsteps, men shouting, something heavy dragging across the floor. A guttural howl tore through the mansion so loud it vibrated the bed frame beneath me. The doorknob went still. Then, scrape, scratch, slow, rhythmic, like claws tracing the wood. I backed up until I hit the far wall, heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted to escape my body entirely. A deep animalistic growl vibrated the door. Then suddenly, "Contain him!" The caretaker's voice, harsh, desperate. "Get the chain, hurry!" A roar answered him, shaking dust from the ceiling. Something heavy slammed into a wall. Something enormous. I pressed both hands over my ears, but the sound still stabbed through my skull. Another voice, one I didn't recognize, shouted, "He's stronger tonight. Keep the lights on him." Lights? Another crash. A scream. A body hitting the floor. My fingertips went numb. And then the caretaker hissed, "Madam, stay back from the door. Don't speak. Don't answer him." I didn't dare respond. I only clutched the edge of the nightstand until my knuckles turned white. Minutes crawled by. Long, tortured minutes, filled with the sounds of struggle. Finally, the chaos moved farther down the corridor. Dragging noises, frantic steps, and that monstrous growling fading into the distance. Until silence. Complete, suffocating silence. I sank to the floor, unable to tell whether the trembling came from me or the mansion itself. A soft knock broke the quiet, not a monstrous one, not a clawing, just a human knock. "Madam," the caretaker's voice, breathless, shaken. I moved slowly toward the door and cracked it open. The hallway was a disaster. Broken lamps, splintered wood, deep gouges in the walls like an animal had tried to dig itself free. And the caretaker? He was sweating, pale, gripping his arm where his sleeve was torn and blood soaked through. He shouldn't have changed before sunset. This is getting worse, faster. "Why?" My voice cracked. "What's happening to him?" He looked at me with something like pity or guilt. "The binding is weakening." He ushered me out, his movements hurried. "We must get you somewhere safe. He won't stay contained long." My stomach twisted. "But he knows I'm here." "Yes, that's why we move." He led me quickly down a hidden passage behind a wall panel near the staircase. The narrow corridor was dark, cool, and smelled of earth and old stone. The door closed behind us, muffling the sounds of the mansion. "Where are we going?" I whispered. "To the only place he cannot enter." I followed him deeper. The walls felt damp, the air colder. My pulse thudded in my ears. We stopped before a heavy iron door, carved with symbols, strange loops, lines, shapes I didn't recognize. The caretaker pushed it open, revealing a small underground room lit by a single lantern. "Stay here until I return," he instructed. "No matter what you hear, you must not leave." "I'm not staying without answers," I snapped, surprising even myself. "Tell me what he is. Tell me what your family did.
Tell me why every wife before me disappeared." The caretaker hesitated, his hand still on the door. "You deserve the truth," he said quietly, "but the truth requires time we do not have." "Make time." His shoulders slumped as if he'd been holding a secret for too many years. The master was born dying. His parents, desperate and afraid, sought out an ancient ritual meant to bind a life to a house, to make the walls breathe for him, to give him years he never would have had. My breath caught. "A life bound to a house?" He continued. "But rituals demand balance. Something must be taken if something is given." I swallowed hard. "Taken from who?" He didn't answer. Because the answer was obvious. Too obvious. My voice came out as a whisper. "From the wives." His silence confirmed everything. They weren't killed. They were consumed, absorbed by him, by the house. I tried to warn them, but the hunger, once it awakens, cannot be reasoned with. I felt the room tilt, my vision narrowing. "And you just let this continue?" I choked out. "You watched him marry again and again?" "He must marry. It is the only way to keep him alive. Without a wife, the creature he becomes grows uncontrollable. If he dies, the house dies, and everything in it, including me." I stepped back, disgusted. "So I'm just food? You are his lifeline." "No," my voice hardened. "I won't be." The caretaker opened his mouth to argue, but a deep, echoing roar vibrated through the stone walls. He went white. "He's broken free," he whispered. My blood froze. The caretaker grabbed the lantern and backed out of the room. "Stay here. Don't move." He slammed the iron door shut. I heard locks sliding into place, heavy, ancient locks, meant to keep something monstrous out, or something helpless in. Then his footsteps faded, leaving me alone in the cold underground chamber. The silence pressed against me. Until tap, tap, tap. Footsteps above, slow, hunting. Something sniffing the air, searching for me. And then a whisper seeped through the cracks in the ceiling like smoke. "Wife, I found you."
The whisper drifted down from the ceiling like a cold breath, curling around my spine and rooting my feet to the stone floor. "Wife, I found you." My lungs locked. Not even the darkness of this underground room felt safe anymore. I backed away slowly, eyes fixed on the ceiling as dust trickled down, tiny grains breaking loose from vibrations above. Something heavy paced the floorboards. A shadow moved. A low growl rolled through the walls like thunder trapped in bone. He was right above me. I swallowed my fear and scanned the room again. 4 stone walls, a lantern, a locked iron door, no windows, no exits. I was in a tomb. A faint scraping noise pulled my attention back upward, like claws dragging across wood. Then something probed the cracks between the planks, something sharp. "Wife, come out." The voice was deeper now, warped, hungry. My heart hammered so violently I feared he could hear it. Another sound shook the room, a low, violent slam, as if he threw his entire weight onto the floorboards, testing their strength. The ceiling groaned, dust poured down like sand in an hourglass. He was trying to break through. I stumbled back until my shoulders hit the rough wall. "Stop," I whispered without thinking. "Please, please stop." For a moment, everything went still. Then he laughed. Not a human laugh, a distorted rumble that sounded wrong in every possible way, wet, rattling, layered with something ancient and starved. "I smell like them," he hissed, "like the ones before you." I squeezed my eyes shut, covering my mouth to choke down a sob. They ran too. They cried. They begged. His voice dropped lower. "But I'm always hungry." A loud crack split the air. A plank in the ceiling bent inward, splintering at the edges. I jumped back, gasping, "No, no, no!" Another crack, more wood snapped, one more hit, and he would fall straight through. Suddenly, footsteps, multiple, boots pounding across the upstairs hallway. The creature growled in annoyance. Then, "Contain him! Keep him back!" The caretaker. Light flashed through the cracks, bright, harsh, flickering. The creature shrieked, recoiling from the brightness. "He hates the light," I whispered. Shadows shifted, struggling. Men shouted, chains rattled. The creature roared with so much force that the lantern in my room flickered violently. My chest vibrated with the sound. Another blast of light, stronger this time, hit the floorboards from above. The creature snarled and retreated, scraping violently across the wood like it was being dragged away. The footsteps and shouting grew fainter as the struggle moved down the hall. Then silence returned. Not peaceful silence, a silence that waited. Minutes passed, maybe more. I couldn't tell. My legs trembled and I sank to the floor, pressing a hand over my pounding heart. That was when I heard the locks on the iron door turn. 1, 2, 3. Metal groaned. The caretaker slipped inside, breathless, hair disheveled, coat torn open at the sleeve. He closed the door behind him hurriedly and leaned against it. "He's contained, for now." "For now?" I snapped, my voice shaking. "He almost came through the ceiling." "I told you not to leave the room," he muttered. "I didn't leave the room. He came from me." The caretaker's expression tightened. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small wooden pendant carved with the same symbols etched into the door. He pressed it into my hands. "Keep this on you at all times," he said. "It won't stop him, but it may slow him." I stared at the pendant. "May?" It depends on how hungry he is." My stomach turned. "Hunger?" I whispered. "You keep saying that. What does he eat? What does he want from me?" The caretaker hesitated, the lantern light carving deep lines of guilt across his face. "He wants what he was promised," he said, "the life force of a bride. Each one extends his human form. Each one delays the transformation." I took a shaky breath. "But why me? Why choose me next?" His eyes softened. "Because you were desperate. Because your family owed the money. Because you would say yes." The truth hit me like a punch. My family didn't choose me. They sold me. I clenched my jaw, anger burning hot under my skin. I'm not going to end up like the others. You might not have a choice. Yes, I do. I stood straighter. There has to be a way out. The caretaker rubbed his face over his face. "There is one possibility, but it's dangerous, deadly even. I'll take it." He looked up sharply. "You don't even know what it is." "I don't care." He hesitated again, then finally spoke. "There is a ritual, one that can sever the bond between him and the house." My hope flickered. "But," he added, "rituals require a life in exchange, a sacrifice." I felt my blood go cold. "Whose life?" The caretaker looked away. "Usually the wife." "No," I whispered. "I'm not dying to free him. That's not an option." "There is another," he said reluctantly. "Someone connected to the bloodline. Someone who helped bind him in the first place." "Your family," I realized. He didn't deny it. "But they're gone. Dead for years, leaving only me."
My breath caught. You're saying you'd have to die? He nodded, calm in a way that terrified me. I stepped back. I'm not asking you to sacrifice yourself. You wouldn't have to ask. He looked at me with hollow eyes. After what I've allowed to happen, maybe I deserve it. Before I could respond, a violent thud shook the walls. The caretaker stiffened. He's awake again, he breathed. That was faster than expected. Another thud, louder, closer. He's coming, the caretaker whispered. He reached for the lantern. We need to go, now. Another roar exploded from above, raining dust from the ceiling. The caretaker grabbed my hand, pulling me toward a narrow passage at the back of the room. But before we could enter, a voice, deep, monstrous, echoing through the stone, rolled down the corridor. Wife, you can run, but you're mine.
The caretaker yanked me into the narrow passageway, just as another roar shook the entire underground chamber. The stone walls trembled, dust cascading from every crack as though the creature's voice alone could tear the mansion apart. My heart slammed so hard in my chest that I could barely breathe. Hurry, the caretaker urged, pulling me along the tight corridor. The lantern swung wildly in his other hand, throwing frantic shadows across the stone. He's tracking you by scent now. We don't have much time. I stumbled over uneven rocks, gripping the pendant he'd given me. Its carved surface burned warm against my palm, as if reacting to the creature's presence. Behind us, something slammed against the iron door we had just escaped through. Bang. 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 The caretaker didn't look back. He's breaking through faster than before. How? I gasped. He was chained. He's stronger tonight. He always grows stronger after choosing his wife. Choosing? My voice cracked. You mean hunting? He didn't answer. The passage twisted sharply, descending deeper underground. The air grew colder, damp, heavy with the smell of earth and something rotten. Another roar echoed behind us, rattling in my bones. We're close, the caretaker said, though his trembling voice betrayed his fear. We emerged into a circular chamber lit only by fading candles. In the center was a stone altar, carved with the same symbols from the red door. Dark stains seeped into the stone, old, dried, and unmistakably blood. I froze. This is where the other wives... Yes, he said quietly. This is where their bond ended, and where yours must end too. My breath tightened. You said the ritual needed a life, but it won't be mine. No, he whispered. It will be mine. I shook my head violently. I'm not letting you do that. You don't have a choice, he said. We're out of time. Another crash thundered down the passage. That iron door was gone now. Footsteps, heavy, dragging, began moving into the tunnel. Too close. The caretaker shoved the lantern into my hands. Listen to me. Place it on the altar. When he enters, hold the pendant up and don't lower it, no matter what you see. What do you mean, see? He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped onto the altar, shoulders slumping in resignation. My life began this curse. It will end it. No, I said again, grabbing his arm. There has to be another way. He gave me a broken smile. Sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to kill the man who made him. Another roar ripped through the chamber. He gently pushed my hand away. Do it. Now. Tears blurred my vision as I lifted the lantern onto the altar. Its flame flickered, casting an eerie glow over the carved symbols.
The caretaker placed my pendant against the stone's center, hands steady even as the ground shook beneath us. The footsteps grew louder, closer, accompanied by guttural snarling. The caretaker closed his eyes and began incantation in a language I didn't recognize. The symbols beneath him pulsed faintly, glowing red like embers beneath ash. The air crackled. The passage behind us grew dark, too dark, like light itself fled from whatever approached. Then he appeared. A towering silhouette emerged from the tunnel, hunched, massive, twisted beyond anything human. Blackened veins snaked across pale, rotting skin. His face, part human, part something monstrous, twisted in a horrific snarl. The mask he once wore had reformed in pieces on his face like bone plating, cracked and warped. His eyes, no longer the gentle eyes of the sickly man I met, burned with a ravenous hunger. "Wife," he hissed. He lunged forward. "Hold the pendant," the caretaker shouted. I raised it with shaking hands. The symbol glowed bright, casting a painful light toward the creature. It screeched, stumbling back. Steam rose from its skin where the light touched. The caretaker began chanting louder, voice cracking, hands pressed firmly to the stone. A violent wind swirled through the chamber as the symbols beneath him ignited into a fiery red glow. The creature thrashed violently, slamming into the walls, claws ripping at the stone. "Finish it!" I cried over the roar. "I am!" he yelled over the chamber. The chamber shook. The altar split down the center. The lantern's flame stretched unnaturally tall, flickering a blinding white. The creature lunged again, forcing its way towards the altar through the burning light. The caretaker screamed in agony, his body convulsing violently as the ritual took hold. Then, a blast of pure white light shot through the chamber. A guttural scream tore through the stone walls. The creature writhed, limbs twisting unnaturally, body distorting like it was being pulled apart by invisible chains. The caretaker's voice rose in one last cry. "Go! Now! No!" I reached for him as cracks spidered across his skin, glowing with searing light. The pendant burned hot in my hand. Then, everything exploded. I was thrown backwards, hitting the chamber wall. Dust filled the air. My ears rang. The ground shook violently beneath me. When the light finally faded, a thick quiet settled over the room. I dragged myself to my knees, coughing. The altar was shattered. The symbols were burned out, the candles extinguished. The caretaker was gone. And the creature? What remained of him was a crumpled husk, shriveled and blackened, like a shadow burned into the stone. He wasn't coming back. I stumbled out of the chamber, up the passageway, through the broken door, and into the hallway above. The mansion felt lighter, emptier, as if the storm that lived inside it had finally died. Outside, dawn was breaking. I stepped into the cold morning air, breathing deeply. For the first time since entering that mansion, I felt alive, free. I whispered into the wind, "You saved me." Then I turned away and walked down the long path toward my freedom. If you learned something new from my life story, please like this video, subscribe for more stories like mine, and comment down below where you're watching this video from. I'd truly love to know.